Hi, friends. I'm Emily Lay, and you're listening to the Simplified podcast. If you're looking for a soft place where you can filter out the noise and the hustle, then this is it. You're in the right place. Each week, I invite you to slow down and join me to explore practical ways to organize and automate the complicated parts of life so you can focus on what truly matters most. Well, friends, I am so glad you're here for this awesome bonus series that we're doing all about simplifying 2022. We are running our New Year's Simplified Planner sale right now, where you can save 20% off your 2022 Simplified Planner over at emilylay.com. All you need to do is use code NEWYEAR at checkout, and this sale will end on New Year's Eve. Welcome to our third New Year's bonus episode. If you're just joining us for the series, then welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is one of my favorite things that we do every single year. We used to do this in a blog format, and I'm excited that we're now doing this on the podcast because it's so easy to listen when you are emptying the dishwasher or going for a walk or even just in the car. Just to let you in, here's what we're doing on the podcast this week. Lately, you've probably enjoyed rest and love and laughter with your people, and I know I have. And right now, over at Team Simplified, we are thinking about what we want our lives to look like in the coming year. I know that sounds daunting and maybe a little bit big, but I also know there's a lot of people putting some shoot for the moon content out there, but this series, I promise it's not that. This week on the podcast, we're not about overhauling our lives and setting wildly out of reach goals or anything like that. This is an invitation to slow down and think about where you are right now, what worked for you this year, and what you want to carry with you into the new year. Maybe you want to turn dials just a hair to see if you get some different results. I know we all have different things that we're thinking about for ourselves. Some people want to make small changes on how they spend and save. Some people want to make a few adjustments on how much they move their bodies. One of the things I want to work on is turning that dial when it comes to making connections with others. I want to make sure I'm building up my village of friends in the coming year, and I know I'm not the only one. Back when we first launched this podcast, I invited one of my best friends, Kristen Winchester, on the show to talk about how to make friends as a grown-up. And y'all, the outpouring of feedback we received on that episode was so huge. And I don't think it was because of the pandemic. I think that we'd still have that same kind of outpouring regardless of what's going on in the world. And you want to know why? I think it's because we're living in a time where we don't see ourselves as dependent on each other. We feel like we don't need anybody else, and we're not supposed to need anybody else. That's what we're told anyway, because needing someone else is weak. It's rude. It's selfish. You're overstepping boundaries. You don't agree on everything, and especially some of the big things, then why even bother? There's a million messages we hear every day that encourage us to stay isolated, to depend on and trust no one but ourselves or a very small group of friends who check all the boxes. It would take a whole series of podcasts to break down why that's the case, but we're not going to go into that today. But I will say, and I've said this before, and I've said it again, we were made for connection. As Brené Brown says, we were made for belonging. Maybe something big has happened in your life over the past few years. Maybe you've graduated from school or gotten married, or you've had a baby, or you've moved, or you haven't quite adapted to remote work, and it's taken you away from an identity or a location you knew like the back of your hand. And all of a sudden, you found yourself surrounded by something new entirely. You don't know anybody around you. You don't know the rules or the dynamics of this new place. Or maybe someone you loved went through an experience just like that, where their whole world changed. They moved away physically or emotionally. Either way, it's a whole new landscape you're having to navigate. I bet you found yourself there multiple times in your life. I know I have. But that longing you feel to share a few laughs over an inside joke, or to spill about a problem at work over a glass of wine, that doesn't go away, does it? So many of our relationships are about proximity. We make friends with people we're around a lot. But if you take away those places that brought you together with other people, like when you leave a school or a workplace or a house of worship, now you have to seek those friends with intention, with a busy schedule full of responsibilities to boot. Listen, It's hard to carve out a few minutes for yourself to go join something. It can feel stressful and scary to put yourself out there to a new group of people who could possibly reject you. It can feel exhausting to navigate social situations where you're learning about someone else and how to care for them well, especially on a Tuesday night when you've had to think about making dinner and checking if all the homework folders are filled out and tucked back into the backpacks. And if you're running too far behind on deadlines, and if you've paid the credit card bill, and if you'll go to bed at a reasonable hour tonight before you have to wake up and do it all over again. I get it. I completely get it. But what you might not be thinking of in that moment is how happy you're going to feel when the 4th of July rolls around and you have someone who can bring her killer potato salad to the party, or how much your kids will enjoy playing with her kids at a sleepover, or how much stress she drains from your day when she texts you silly gifts from Ted Lasso. I'm laughing because I was just doing this with a friend a minute ago about Ted Lasso. Or how much you'll grow from someone who thinks a bit differently from you about things going on in the world, who pushes you to think about what you really believe, and if there's something else you need to do about it. You won't have the words to say about how grateful you are to have someone who knows you well enough to ask how your mom's feeling after her latest round of chemo, and drops your favorite takeout at your door without even asking because she knows you guys are really going through it right now. And you'll never understand how life-giving it is to do the exact same thing for her. You'll never get over how much meaning and purpose and love you find when you get to be a good friend to someone else. On a busy Tuesday night, it's hard to think about the fruit of friendship when it's a struggle just to sow the seed. But a year from now, I wonder how you'll feel about having a village of friends that's a bit bigger and wider than what you started with this year, even if it's just 1 or 2 people. As someone who's been trying to do this over the last couple of years, I'll let you in on a little secret. You're going to feel really, really good about it. A few years ago, when we moved back to Pensacola from Tampa, back to my hometown, I had to say goodbye to some friends that I loved dearly. And I was moving back to a town where I didn't have the same network of friends I did when I was growing up. It was daunting and scary, and I remember feeling really overwhelmed by the whole thing. But I knew if I didn't plug myself into something that I would be missing out on relationships that are deeply, deeply important to me. So today I'm excited to introduce you to a very, very dear friend of mine, one of my best friends in the entire world. Her name is Jane Lauder, and Jane and I actually met because our kids are the same age. Brady is the same age as her oldest, and my twins are the same age as her youngest. And so we met at school. In fact, I had had a couple of friends mention her to me, and I knew that her son had been really sweet to Brady when he was visiting the school before we chose to enroll him there. And if you've listened to the Includer episode on the podcast, you know about the sweet little boy who invited Brady to play football and sit with him at lunch. That was her son, Jack. But I knew who Jane was, so I was like kind of on the lookout for her because I'd heard she was just a great human, and I was right. And now Jane is just a dear friend, and we are actually part of a book club together. You guys have probably heard me talk about my local book club and how much I love it. But I'm really just so excited to have Jane on the podcast today. The way that she approaches friendship and the way that she thinks about community and her village and just showing up for people, it's so unique and it's so cool to me. And I am so excited to have her on. Today, Jane and I are going to talk about how to build up your village of friends in the coming year. She, like I said, is one of my favorite people in the whole world, and I am so glad that you get to meet her today. So here we go. Here is my conversation with Jane Lauder. I am so excited for everybody to meet you, Jane, because Jane's one of my favorite people on the planet. And I mentioned this earlier, but Jane is one of those people that, like, she just shows up. She shows up, she brings all her stuff, all the good, all the bad. And I just love a human like that. Like, there's no pretense. There's no, like, you can come to my house and it could be a disaster and you don't even look at the floor.
Heck no, because then if you came to my house, it would be the same.
That's awesome. Well, Jane and I like to talk about friendship a lot because as you get older and as we kind of, have grown out of like not grown out of, but as we've like moved on from high school and college and like those kinds of places where making friends is so different. Making friends as a grown up is hard, or at least it is for me sometimes.
For sure.
And we love to talk about this because it's so rare to find a friend that is so genuine and so authentic and like just shows up, you know? And I love you because, well, for many reasons, but because you are also, not only do you just like show up, you are such a cheerleader for your friends. And like, you just love to like be in the front row and cheering on people and whatever they're doing. And you've always been such a good supporter to me.
Okay, so can you just like come to my brain and say this every morning as I get up for my mantra? You are the same for me. And I love that. And every day I'm like so thankful for our kids because had our kids, actually Brady and Jack specifically, but now the little ones too.
So look, we're going to start with like the very most basic of questions as we talk about what it means to build up your village and to love your friends and support your friends and like bring people around you that are your real true community. But what is the most important thing to you in a friend?
Okay, so this is easy and hard because I think it has definitely changed, especially after becoming a mom, for sure. You know, I've always wanted to be around people, but I think now I specifically want to be around like real, authentic, loyal people. You know, people that are intentional with their friendships, people that are vulnerable. You know, I'm the kind of person that I like to show up, whether it's pretty or messy. And I'm like, hey, I'm here. Let's do all the things. If we need to crawl in bed, let's crawl in bed. If we need to, you know, go sit on the back porch and watch the kids swim in the pool. So for me, I think being real is something that I truly value in my friendships.
Yep. And that's like when people show up with the good, the bad, the ugly, you know?
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, I feel like it's become, and we've had many conversations about this, but it's become more and more difficult for me to show up in any circle that isn't like that, you know? Where you have to like show up perfect and like leave all the baggage and all the hard stuff you're going through or whatever at home. And you have to show up with the pretty face on.
Yes, it's hard. And I feel like, especially as you become a mom and you're wearing all these hats, like some days it's just impossible to show up without it being messy, you know? And so I truly value like walking into doing something at the kid's school and the mom that's just coming in like a hot mess. And I'm like, you know what? She had a really hard morning. And like, I can appreciate that because that's my morning every day.
Right. No, it's so true. And Jane is a co-founder of Pensacola Mom Collective. And so if you're in Pensacola, you have to check it out. If you're not in Pensacola, there may be one in your area or your city, right? Because there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Yeah. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they're growing still. So check them out because I think the most important thing, and I co-founded it with my best friend, Jen, who I know you talk about a lot too. She's in our friend group. And, you know, for me, it was so important to do just what we're doing today and to like create a community of women that are like, you know, maybe I don't fit in there, but you can fit in here. You know, we all have a story. We all have the messy. If you don't have the messy, you're not telling the truth.
That is a fact. That is so true. If you say that you don't have anything hard going on at home, you are not telling the truth.
Yes.
I love that. And I love what Pensacola Mom Collective does too, because I feel like this isn't your official mantra, but it's very much like, you have a seat here. Like, come and sit with us. We get it.
For sure.
Momming is the most wonderful, fantastic, hard thing I've ever done in my whole life. It's really cool the way that you support moms in the area.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially as I get older, I feel that hat that we as women have to wear, you know, like maintaining the house and the husbands and the kids and the, you know, activities and all the things that I just feel like some days you just want to sit there and cry and you really don't even know why. Or you want a pet cat.
I wanted a pet cat. Oh my goodness. I have another question for you. So was there ever a time in your life where you felt like you did not have that friend support network that you wanted? Because I feel like these days, I'm so grateful to have the friend group that I had. I didn't always have a friend group around me that was so supportive and so willing to show up and so I had surgery a couple months ago, and I'll never forget, like, I was still groggy from the anesthesia and whatnot, and I opened my eyes, and I hear Jane in the living room, and you just came over, like, somehow somebody asked you to get our kids, and you had the kids, you showed up in the living room, and you're like, here's dinner, and I was like, Jane, is that you? That having a friend like that is so valuable, but there were times in my life where I didn't have friends like that, and so for you, was there ever a time like that in your life? How did that make you feel? And then what did you do about it?
Going through hard stuff, that it can feel very isolating. And I think everybody feels that way, whether it's, something going on at home or with your parents or with your kids or with your husband. And I think in those times, I probably have felt most isolated and just thinking that nobody understands it. And I think that's just me being in my head. More than just putting myself out there. And I think it goes back to being vulnerable and just telling telling a friend and letting them have that moment to say, oh my gosh, I went through that. I mean, I was a grown adult when my parents got divorced, and that was really hard for me. And I'm surrounded by friends whose parents are like 30 and 40, years of marriage. And I didn't want that to be like that. And so I think I felt very like nobody understands this. But then when I went to my friends, I realized, okay, I just need to be vulnerable and tell them and let them show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Share your stuff. Yeah. That's so true. And it's so hard sometimes to like take off the mask, and sit down and be like, here's what I'm going through. Here's the hard thing. And I also like I think it's a little bit harder for me than I like to admit because I'm still a recovering perfectionist. But what I love about some of the friends I have, and you do this really well, is that you can tell when I'm kind of like retreating, which is what I do when I have a lot going on. Jane and I say I go
writing a book.
I'm writing a book. I go in my hole. Like I start to retreat and like just get in my head or when I just have a lot going on. And Jane, like, you'll reach out and be like, how are you? Like, for real? Are you good? You need anything? Like, can I come over?
But you know what? You do the same. And I think that's part of what we're both being intentional as friends.
Yeah.
Like you've sent me a text before saying, all right, if you don't respond to me, I'm showing up on your doorstep. And I'm like, oh God, I have to respond. This means I have to be vulnerable.
I remember that. I was like, I'm coming over. I know where you live.
I know you will. Or, I think I had to make a really big decision with my kids last year, my oldest. And when I made that decision, it wasn't the one I wanted to make. I wanted everything to play out the way I had it in my head, and it didn't. And you knew that. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I had M&Ms on my doorstep and I was like, oh, I love her.
I remember that I Instacarted or shipped or something.
You did. But I think in order to get there, you have to show the messy, like you have to be vulnerable. And I think your friends love you through it. Like it's okay to dislike your husband one day. Like your best friend knows you love them.
Right.
But the morning was hard with the kids and you just don't like them. So you need to be able to call your friend and get that off your chest and move on.
So true. I love my husband every day, but I don't like him every day.
100%.
So how do you think friendships, like in this stage of life, like now, so you have 2 kids, you've been married a lot of years. I've been married a lot of years. I have 3 kids. Our kids are all in elementary school. How do you think friendships in this stage of life are different from ones you've had before? And on that note, what do you think's better about them and what is more challenging?
Okay. So I really feel like with friends now, they're real. We're doing real life together. Love my friends from, I still have some of my childhood best friends and I adore them and my college friends, but that was without responsibility. So in the day-to-day life, when we're all doing our responsibilities, I feel like you have to make a point, to reach out to those people. So I feel like the joy in that is your friendships are the icing on the cake, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to planning something with my friends, which I learned in COVID times. I'm really a people-y person. Really like to just see my friends, you know, like if I have a hard morning, getting the kids out the door and doing all the things for work, and then I get to have lunch with a friend, it refills my bucket. It makes me so happy.
Yep.
So I think for me as as a mom, as a wife, as someone approaching 40, I think my friendships are such a joy for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge is I don't have as much time as I want to give my friends.
Yeah.
You know, like they refill my bucket and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to go home. And then I'm like, hey, it's a school night and we have to be up for a field trip and do all the things. So I have to go home. But I've had those nights Netflixing on your couch that I don't want to go home. You know, I'm like, this is really fun and I don't want to do real life tomorrow.
I know. Jane is like the most extroverted of extroverts. Do you think you're an extrovert or do you think you're an introvert?
I mean, I feel like I go through phases like you, but I think I last longer in my extroverted moments.
When quarantine happened, I remember texting you and being like, "Are you okay?" Because it was so isolated. I was like,
yes,
I'm good. I'll be at my house all by myself forever with my whatever with the family. But then again, after a while, I was like, okay, I miss my people. Like I miss being around other humans and friends and get-togethers, and because we were doing a lot of that before COVID happened. And
my text threads kept me alive. I mean, let's be honest. Like during that moment, but I really like turned inward and was like, okay, I'm like. On my birthday, all my friends did a parade by my house. It was like March. COVID was like really real, had just hit, and like nobody was being around anybody. And so they came through my neighborhood and did a parade and like held signs out and were like, happy birthday. And I loved it. And it was the best. I mean, those parades actually are a silver lining to me from COVID, doing them for the kids, friends and stuff. But I was also like, oh, don't leave. I want to hug you.
I remember that. It was so fun. That was the first one, the first birthday.
It really
parade.
was. If you have not done a COVID parade, I really don't think they should go away. I think they should be a permanent thing.
I feel like there's a lot of things from COVID that like, I mean, not COVID, obviously, but like there's a lot of things from that experience that like, I hope they don't go away, you know, like birthday parade and the way that like we supported our community people, you know, like restaurants and whatnot. Like I just remember a local florist, like it suddenly became so important to me to support them because they had lost all their weddings and they had lost, you know, all their things. And I don't know, it was like this weird sense or new sense of community pride where it's like, oh my gosh, we have to come together.
Community pride. And you know what I think it also brings me back to that we all did and we had the time, which is the joy of all of it, is we were being so intentional.
We were.
I woke up and I didn't get to go to lunch with you or Lee or Jen or all of our close friends. So I was like intentionally like, well, I want to support the local florist. Or support the local baker. And I'm going to go put cookies on Emily's doorstep and bring a cake and flowers. And, you know, and it was like little things that you were able to do with intention.
I remember, was it you that brought the cakes? They were so good.
Yes.
The cakes. And then Fiore, the florist that we're talking about, I called her and was getting flowers for something. And then I was like, you know what? Can you make me like 10 hand carry little bouquets, like just little bouquets that the kids and I can get in the car and go take them and put them on doorsteps of friends. And you're right. It was like being intentional with friendships and with our community.
I had like a lot of people that are in our friend group write letters, like just pop a letter in the mail. And I didn't like, that's such a, you know, now it's like send a text or whatever, but I didn't realize how much like a snail mail letter of saying, I really appreciate you and I miss seeing you.
Yeah.
How much that would like bring joy to me and fill my bucket.
So, okay, let's say you're moving to a new city where you know absolutely no one, which you and I have both done that. What is the first thing that you do to try and plug into a group somewhere or at least make like one single friend? So pre-children, I would say probably the best way for me to do it was just getting out and doing things that I loved. Yeah.
Like volunteering at the hospital or the gym or places like that, and then meeting people through things that you already have in common or that you like. I think post kids, definitely school.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
School. I mean, I think like hands down, some of my very best friends as an adult I've met through my children.
Yeah, me too. And you have that in common, which makes that even more fun,
Yeah. Then you can travel together and really learn all the fun stuff.
Right. So Jane's kids and my kids are the same age. So her youngest is the same age as the twins, and her oldest is the same age as Brady. So that's really fun. I have to say, so I'll put the link to this in the show notes. And by the time this episode comes out, it might have rolled out of theaters. But I have to tell you this, Jane, you have to go see the movie. It's called Ron's Gone Wrong. And it's all about friendship. So we went as a family and watched it, and it was so cute. It's about how to be... Okay, so the premise, without going on a huge tangent here, the premise is that there's this tech company, which is obviously supposed to kind of sort of represent Facebook, Instagram, whatnot. There's this tech company, and they make this little robot called a Bee-Bot. And the Bee-Bot is everybody's best friend. And so you buy a Bee-Bot and you upload all your information to it, and then it becomes your best friend. You love rock collecting, it loves rock collecting. You love volleyball, it loves volleyball. It tells you you're the best volleyball player. And it follows you around. You take it to school, whatever. And then this kid, his family can't afford the big fancy Bee-Bot or whatever, and also doesn't really value technology in that way. And so his dad buys him one that fell off a truck. And so he gets this damaged Bee-Bot, which is basically like an analog Bee-Bot, if you will. So it can't do all the fancy things like tell you you're the best volleyball player or love rocks like you. It's different than you. And so they basically make their own algorithm. So he teaches the Bee-Bot how to be a friend, and the Bee-Bot teaches him how to be a friend. And it is so cute. You would love it. It's so cute. It's so good. Okay.
I feel like that's the epitome of my soul is trying to teach those things to kids, because also to note, your kids are watching. Yeah. So when you're doing kind things for your friends by writing a letter in the mail or putting something on their doorstep when they're having a hard day, I feel like your kids see that. Why are you doing that? We're always talking about that. And then I think my kids aren't always the best to their best friends. And then I have to step in and be like, that's not how you want to be. You know, you're going to argue with your best friend. Let's be honest. You love each other, but it's the same as you love your family. Just love them through that.
So true. It's so true. And I also think it's so important to both you and me about seeking out the person that doesn't have a friend or the person that's new or whatever. And so they see us when we're oh, there's a new mom that's, on the field trip and doesn't know anybody, or a new kid at school. Let's talk about how we're going to bring that kid into the fold and make them feel welcome. So
okay, you really are so wonderful at that. Oh, I have to give you props.
Thanks.
You really, I don't know if it's because you felt that way when you came here, but I've noticed it a lot about you lately that I think, oh, she's really taking note of that and playing it out so beautifully.
I think my parents kind of instilled this love of the underdog in me a little bit.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
There's this very raw, tender part of me that's always on the lookout for who's sad, who's left out, who needs a hug. So this isn't going to apply to everybody, but I'm thinking in terms of the moms who are listening. Our kids happen to get along great. And I know how much fun it is when families just super gel together. But let's say you want to get together with another mom, but you're not sure if your kids are going to totally hit it off, right? Maybe they're different ages, maybe they have different interests. So how do you kind of set your kids up for a friend meetup? How do you prepare them for that kind of a thing?
Oh gosh, I am not a pro at this. I'm not the best at this because I feel like I have achieved this in my older ages. So, and I probably wasn't the best at it as a kid, but I very much want my kids to be that.
Yeah.
So I definitely am just trying to be encouraging. Also, I try not to stress too much about it because I feel like if I say to my kids, well, be nice and include them. They only hear half of that. And I'm hoping that they're going to do that anyway.
No, I totally agree with that. The more emphasis you put on like, okay, here's how we're going to do. Here's what, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. It makes them kind of like freeze up.
But also, I mean, I am of the mindset too, that the kids don't always have to be the best friends in the exact same ages to have good friendships, even amongst a family, right? Like, you don't need to be best friends. I mean, do we need to go and be kind and try to enjoy doing something together while we're all together? Yeah, but you don't have to be their best friend, because I feel like we put a lot of pressure on that for kids.
Yeah.
And kids are still learning it. So they might be, I mean, I have seen like as a kid and like seeing kids, I'm so mad at you today. And then especially our girls. And then the next day they're like linked arms, don't come near us. We're best friends in the whole wide world. So I feel like kids are trying to figure, they're trying to emotionally regulate that too. So I try not to put too much emphasis on it.
I think that's such a good point. And there's value in them learning how to like work things out or like get along with people who don't have the same interests as them,
True.
Or who like do things differently. I think there's a lot of value in like learning how to be adaptable.
Also, opposites attract. Like, my oldest is really intense and high energy. And sometimes he does better with people that can like vibe that from him, And so sometimes I feel like maybe your best friend or maybe your people that you hang out with don't have to do everything the same way you do. Maybe they just balance you out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I love that. I think our kids are always going to all be different. And the same goes for grownups. Like, we're all different. We all have different lives and different seasons and different situations. But like, being kind matters so much universally,
I mean, I am an Enneagram 8, which
I love my 8s.
It's intense, but I love 2s. Like, if you look at all the people around me, everyone I love and is close to me is near the Enneagram 2, which are the people pleasers. So I feel like you guys can tolerate my intensity and my like need for hugs and to be with you and all the things.
You know what though? Like, your need for hugs, like that, it's part of you. Like, that's just who you are. Like, you need, I love 8s. My dad Pop is an 8.
I loved Pop.
I know, I love Pop too. But I love that about you when you have a friend that like, what they need, they're like, I go in a hole sometimes. I know you need hugs. That's when you have a really special friendship.
Yes. So, but I also think if you look at the Enneagram scale, we're probably far from similar. We might not have played the best of friends on the playground at 6 and 7 or even 10 and 11.
Right.
But as we become mature adults, we say, oh, I like really value that about that person, that they speak their mind, or, hey, I'm really not into people that speak their mind because I don't love confrontation.
Jane's the friend that you'll be like, okay, so let's say we're at a restaurant. We order our food. Let's just say mine comes out completely wrong. And I'm like, it's good. I'm fine. It's fine. I don't need to cause, and Jane's like, I got this. Excuse me.
We're sending it back and getting it right.
And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. I love that. Okay. I have 3 rapid fire questions for you. So you're just like, I do this with Kristen when she comes on the podcast too, and it's so fun. So I'm just going to ask you questions and you just say whatever comes to your brain. Okay?
Oh gosh. Okay.
This is loaded. Okay. Are you a text messenger or voice messenger? Which you like better?
I think voice lately. I love voice text.
Yeah. You're one of the friends that I do that with because sometimes I don't have time to like use my thumbs.
I like it. I mean, mostly a text, but yeah, I love a voice text.
Same. Okay. Go to a meal to bring a friend or something to like send a friend. Maybe let's say that they're like having a hard time. Go-to thing.
Okay. So locally, like if it was a friend, I would just show up with something, wine, champagne, casserole, love it. But if I have to send something, I love Spoonful of Comfort, which is soups. Mm-hmm. And I love Southern Baked Pie Company, which I'm really still trying to get you to order. But they have like dessert pies and like chicken pot pie.
So good. I can't wait to try it. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, I think food is my love language too, for me, because if I can show up somewhere and you don't have to make dinner or I don't have to make dinner, we are winning.
That is a win. All right, top getaway you'd want to go on with a friend.
Oh, God. Like anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the whole... I already know the answer to this, but anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world, I would go anywhere, but I really want to go to Italy and France.
Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say.
But about this. That's not a reality. So being realistic, I'll go anywhere quiet without our kids.
We've done that before. Jane, we love to go find like quiet little places. Best friend getaways.
Best friend getaways that are quiet and we can just talk about friendship.
That's awesome. All right. Jane, you're my favorite. Thanks for coming on here. And
thank you. I love you.
Chatting about villages and friendship. You're the best. And we'll have you back on soon.
Yay.
I just love Jane so much, and I'm so thankful for her for so many reasons, obviously, but I am so glad that you guys got to know her and spend some time with her today. Here's what I took away from our chat. I think it is just so important to bring all your stuff to your friendships, the good, the bad, the ugly, showing up real and imperfect, being willing to be vulnerable and to talk not just about the perfect parts of your life, but the hard stuff as well. I think it's so valuable to have a friend that will make space for you to do that and who will fill that space you make for her as well. I just think that it's so important that we focus on our community and on our people as we move into this new year. So right now, I'm going to pray a little blessing over you before we go back to our days. But this episode, I'm going to borrow some beautiful words that I read recently. I think they capture not only the kind of struggle we've been talking about today, but what we've been talking about all week, about how we can redeem the hard thing we've been struggling with. This is something written by an Irish poet named Pádraig Ó Tuama. Listen to what he wrote. Let us pick up the stones over which we stumble, friends, and build altars. Let us listen to the sound of breath in our bodies. Let us listen to the sounds of our own voices, of our own names, of our own fears. Let us name the harsh light and soft darkness that surround us. Let us claw ourselves out from the graves we've dug. Let us look up and out and around. The world is big and wide and wild and wonderful and wicked, and our lives are murky, magnificent, malleable, and full of meaning. Isn't that just beautiful? As always, I like to leave a little tip to help you put what we've talked about today into practice. So here is your task for this week. If you're looking for a way to widen your circle, guess what? There's an app for that. Check out Meetup, where you can find events in your town for people to join. If you're a new mom, you can find other new moms to connect with on Peanut. And you know the dating app Bumble? There's actually a friendship version called Bumble BFF. I kid you not. And don't forget, there are all kinds of old school ways to meet people, especially volunteering for a cause you care about. I bet you'll find someone to connect with who cares about the same things that you do. Thank you for listening to the Simplified podcast. I hope today's episode helped you feel a bit more excited about expanding your social circle this year. You can find show notes for this episode at emilylay.com/podcast, where you can check out links and resources I mentioned here. And you can shop the Simplified brand of planners and products at 20% off until December 31st. Plus, for more simplicity tips, you can find me on Instagram at Emily Lay and at Simplified. If you're loving this show, then I bet you might like my latest book called Growing Boldly, Dare to Build a Life You Love, which is in stores right now wherever you buy books. And one more thing, if you are enjoying this show, I hope you will tell me in a review on your favorite podcast provider. This is a small way you can help this show find its way to other people who might enjoy it. I read every single review, and if you've already left one, I am so grateful. You guys are the best community I could ask for. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bye.